Smart.
Yes. It's a love letter to women with something to say.
Oh,
so
that's
you have
perfect.
a lot to say.
Oh, well, thank you. I hope so.
No, you definitely do. Fortune is maybe the best name in comedy.
It's pretty good, right?
It's so good.
I have my grandmother to thank for that.
I heard that story. She had a group of women.
So it's her mother's maiden name. There was 3 daughters in that family, and they called them the Misfortunes. So that was the group of women I think you might be thinking of. And she just really, really wanted my mom to name me Fortune. She was very adamant about it. And my mom loved the name Emily. That's my first name. And was like, no way. She'd have to be Miss America to live up to a name like that. And so it ended up being my middle name. But I never resonated with my first name. And no one ever called me it. They called me like Feimster or Feemy, Femer. So when I started doing comedy, I was like, I have this cool middle name. My grandmother really wanted that to be my name, and I started using it as a nod, like a little shout out to her. And then here we are. It just took.
I hope that she and her sisters took all the misfortune.
I think so. Yeah.
I think she's probably. Is she with us?
No, she died when I was 18, which is part of why I started using it when I did comedy, as kind of a remembrance of her.
That's beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
So you grew up in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
LA must have been quite a shock.
It was. It was somewhere I'd never visited before, and I'm from a tiny town of 9,000 people. It might be 12 now. It's a real metropolis.
Yeah.
But the one saving grace is I randomly, after I graduated college, I moved to Spain for a year. Don't ask me why.
Do you speak Spanish?
Not a little bit, but not well. It's been so long since I was there. It was an amazing experience, but it was hard to live abroad when you've grown up in this tiny town. I went to a tiny college. But I think if I hadn't done that, LA would have been super hard. But I was like, I can live anywhere now. So when I left Spain to move to LA, and I think it helped that transition a lot.
When I read that you wrote Robin Williams a letter in 7th grade and he replied, I thought, this has been in you forever.
Yeah, and I didn't even think I realized that till I we found that letter when I was home this February.
You didn't remember writing it?
I remembered vaguely, like sending him something and getting a picture back, but I didn't really remember what I wrote. I didn't remember what he wrote, and I took a picture of the letter, and I thought it was so cool that, him or his people, whoever, took the time to do that.
What did he say?
Gosh, I don't even remember now, but something about, like, pursuing your dreams and sticking with it, and just like it was an appreciation of watching him and his stuff, and just giving you that personal connection, which it does stick with you, that someone cares that you watch their thing and that you support them. That was really neat.
It's meaningful.
And we got to meet his daughter out here, and she's lovely, and it just felt like a very full circle moment.
Do you remember your first time on stage?
Yes. I had 2 kind of experiences. I remember my first time doing theater, and it was terrifying. I was doing Shakespeare.
But that's different. Like, comedy's more terrifying.
I don't know. The Shakespeare as a, this Southern girl trying to be like, where art thou? It wasn't great. But my first time doing comedy was improv. And I definitely remember that first show of just like, this is the greatest feeling in the world. People were laughing and having a good time. But then my first stand-up stage was at the end of a 6-week class. And I talked about how much I hated strawberries, if that tells you how far my material has come. But it was
it's very
awesome,
niche.
I know. But it was an awesome feeling. Yeah. Like being up there and hearing like your words make a reaction like that.
So the first time you went up, it resonated? Yeah,
I think that there was just, I found something that I think at the time it felt like, I'm meant to be here.
That's so special.
So Yeah, it didn't feel like, oh, I'm going to enter into this very weird world and let's give it a shot. It felt very much like you finally found it. You found the thing.
Would you watch stand-ups and think like I can do that, or you just
I
got up
watched
one day?
more like SNL type things, Carol Burnett, like a lot of charactery stuff. I was really drawn to those big silly characters, people acting ridiculous. Oh, and so I did the Growlings for like 7 years, where I did all that stuff. But stand up, I didn't grow up watching stand up, so I think when I did see stand up, I felt like, oh, there's something intriguing about that. But I don't think I looked at it like, oh, I could do that. I think it was more like, oh, that's interesting.
Now that you say the characters, it makes me think that's kind of how we met you on Chelsea Lately.
Yeah, I did a ton of sketches and stuff for them.
This was really special. I actually just did an episode on miracles.
Oh, yeah?
And so this resonated with me. You asked for a miracle shortly before you got the writing job at Chelsea Lately. I don't know if you've seen this, but online, the singer Sierra, there's like this big joke because she prayed for a good man and then she got Russell Wilson.
Oh, yeah?
Every woman is like, tell me the prayer.
They're all like,
what's the prayer?
Jesus.
Yeah. So when I was reading this, I was like, what's the miracle? What's the prayer?
Well, life does have those moments where it kind of makes you feel like you're in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing. And that was one of those moments. I was a journalist, and that was my day job, and that's how I paid my bills. I was doing comedy at night. All these newspapers folded, and I lost my job, and I had enough money to live for that specific amount of time, and I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do to pay the bills, but I kind of went all in. Like, I'm gonna put it all into comedy, see what happens. And a year later, I was broke and not having a lot of traction. I had done Last Comic Standing, so I got something. I had that, like, enough to give me hope, like, that this could be something. But yeah, it was New Year's Eve, and owed my roommate rent for the next, month, and didn't have it, and was no money in the bank account and no prospects. And I just had that come to Jesus moment. And my friends and I were sitting around a table, and we, did that very LA thing where it's like, what are your resolutions? And tell us how you feel.
The vision
And
board.
I just gave it over to, like, I got nothing, and I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills. I'm scared, and this is the first time I don't know how to dig myself out of this hole. I really want this thing, and I think I'm supposed to do this thing, and I don't know how to get there. And I've done everything I can to try to make it happen. And, just have that thing of, like, this is a very real place of where I'm at. And my friends just kind of rallied. And this one friend made this joke of, like, she started hitting the table, like, pretending to be Oprah. And she was like, and you're going to go to Australia, and you're going to go to Australia. And then we all started hitting the table. So there was something about this energy coming together. And 3 weeks later, I got an interview for the Chelsea Lately show for a writer position. 1 week later, I got hired. Wow. And the first day of work, the showrunner brought me into his office, and he said, by the way, we're in May going to go to Australia for a week.
You're kidding.
To film, and we already decided you're going to come with us. And I was like, oh my God.
I have chills.
So it was like one of those things where I was like, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. And it totally changed my career. Them hiring me, they were the first people. I'd tested twice for SNL, didn't get it, obviously, and they were the first. Chelsea was the first person that said yes. She opened this big door that was closed to me for a long time in the industry, and I've been working ever since. So it really did change the course of my career.
I was reading about how you said that she's the person who said yes when everyone else said no.
Mm-hmm.
Humility aside,
yeah,
what do you think she was able to see in you that other people just didn't?
I think that she has this ability to not care about, like, Hollywood had a very specific idea of who's allowed on television and who's not. You got to look this way, you got to be this weight, you got to be this thing, you got to fit in this mold. And she was one of the few people who was in a position of power who didn't feel like that mold made sense for her. She liked the things that were different or unique, like the things that made her laugh. She wasn't beholden to this Hollywood stereotype. And that was a time when being different was not accepted or encouraged.
It wasn't celebrated.
No, not like now. We're really entering into a place of like, you're different. That's awesome. We want, unique voices and different voices. That was not the case in 2011. So she just had this ability to find talent and put them on television when nobody else would, and the audiences were like, yes, that's what we want. And that she was one of the people that did that, and because the audiences were saying, I don't want that cookie cutter thing y'all been shoving down our throats for a while. We like this different thing. So I was really grateful she like cut through all that industry tape and just was like, here you go, people. Here's some silly people I'm gonna put on TV, and it worked.
It definitely worked. I remember laughing so hard. At all of those segments you did.
Oh, that's awesome. We had fun. It was this crazy show, silly show.
It feels like it was sort of this place. When I've interviewed people that worked on the show, it's like one of the special almost incubators. Like there are moments of that in Hollywood. You can tell. Like Friends maybe was one of them. It felt special.
She introduced people to a lot of comics.
Yeah.
That are still really successful and working and doing cool things. Like, and I think everyone just liked seeing all of us laugh together, making each other laugh.
Yeah. I think the idea of, if we call it rejection, like you kept saying, there was all these no's, is so universal. It seems to me every person that I interview that like pushes through the gauntlet has to tell themselves yes so many times when everyone's telling you no.
I mean, that is the thing this business has taught me more than anything, is to bet on yourself. I mean, that is the biggest thing I've had to learn, even in times where you have a comfortable job, like you finally made it to the point where you have a thing, you have to push yourself. What's the next thing? Like, don't get too comfortable in this. Like, always challenge yourself to try new things, do new things. But this is a business that loves to say no, and it loves to tell you why they don't want you over and over and over again. So you have to really get to a place of being like, knowing your worth, believing in that and sticking to it and not veering from that. And it's hard. I mean,
it's hard.
There are plenty of times where you're just like, how do I get through this? But it does make you stronger, and you get that thicker skin, and you just got to be ready for those opportunities when they come.
You mentioned that you were a journalist for 7 years before, which is incredible, because I think entertainment journalists like get this sort of interesting and you have all these really funny stories of your time on the red carpet, one with Will Smith in particular that really made me laugh.
He was one of the first big celebrities I interviewed on a red carpet.
That's a big celeb for one of your first interviews.
Well, especially when you don't know what you're doing. The woman training me just like handed me her tape recorder and was like, next up is you. And I look, and then there he is right in front of me, and I'm like, what? This is the person I start with? That was wild. I think that was the very first movie premiere I did on my own. It was like Bad Boys 2, and then Legally Blonde 2 was the next one. So then I'm interviewing Reese Witherspoon.
Were you serious or were you funny?
Well, I think I just look funny naturally, and I have this very thick Southern accent. So I found that people, you would see them act a certain way down the red carpet. And then they would get to me, and I'm kind of a goofball, and I'm like, hey, y'all, like, what are you doing? We're going to have fun tonight. And you could kind of see there's a little bit of a guard up. You could kind of see it fall a bit. And so I feel like, I did end up getting to have some, like, neat conversations with people. We're just, like, for, like, 5 minutes. We had, like, a cool conversation. They probably won't remember it, but at the time,
5 minutes is a long time. You must have been really fun.
I mean,
usually it's like one question.
Yeah, sometimes you got that too. It would depend on how busy the red carpet was.
What did the red carpet teach you? Because it actually taught me persistence.
Yeah. I hated that, like, yelling.
It's the worst.
I just want a question. Like, I wouldn't do it. I was just like, I don't care. They can just keep walking.
I always felt like such a parasite.
Yeah.
It was just a really tough job to swallow for me.
Yeah, I think that's why I talked to the people that wanted to be talked to.
That's a nice outlook.
And I wouldn't really get into that crazy, like, I'm yelling a question at somebody. But that's because the people I worked for were really cool and nice. I didn't have that pressure, so we just were an outlet that wanted to. We weren't like gossipy. We were more like, tell us about the project you're working on. That sounds nice. Cool. Yeah. So it was less like, what do you think about
how's
Lindsay
your divorce
Lohan?
going?
Yeah. So it let me learn about the business kind of adjacent. I got to just talk to them about their jobs.
It's kind of cool to have that insight before you're on the other side of the carpet.
And I got to go to sets and just kind of see how it worked from a different perspective. So I loved it. It was fun.
Your new comedy special is called Good Fortune.
Yes.
And I was so excited that it was filmed in Chicago.
Yeah.
Your first one was in North Carolina where you were from, so that made sense. But this one, why Chicago?
Because I met my now wife in Chicago 7 years ago at Gay Pride. So a lot of the set, I ended up talking about our relationship and how we met and getting engaged and getting married. So because that set focused a lot on that relationship, it just seemed to make sense. Here's another personal connection to this set. There were people in the audience that were there when we met, and so just having I like having that kind of like it's here because this means something. This is a part of my life that was very meaningful. Whereas like North Carolina, a lot of those stories took place growing up. This is like a big part of my life going into adulthood. Like, I'm being an adult. I have a wife. And this is where I met her.
Your mom seems like such a character.
She is. Yeah.
Some of my favorite jokes of yours have to do with your family.
Yeah.
In particular, your mother.
I know. I need to start thinking about more of the crazy stuff she's done for my next act.
Well, when I do this podcast, I sometimes get calls from my mom.
Oh, really?
Like, you totally mischaracterized me. What does your mom think about the jokes? Does she like being a part of your set?
Oh yeah, God yes. She tries to come to as many shows as she can. Like if they're anywhere that's in the vicinity of North Carolina, she'll want to come because she knows I'm probably gonna mention her at some point, and she just likes being talked about. She's always looking around like that's me. She likes that attention. She was on our podcast a lot, so she had people become very invested in her, which she loves.
Do people come up to her?
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, she's very involved in the she's involved in the gay community back home as far as an ally. You know, so a lot of young gay people will seek her out at things and be like, thank you for your support of the community, and it's really special to see that. Occasionally, once in a blue moon, she'll be like, I didn't think that was funny. You should not be sharing that about my life. But mostly, she's very much on board.
For people who haven't seen this yet, can you tell us a little bit about her denying her love for Hooters?
Well, in my Sweet and Salty special that's on Netflix currently, I tell this whole story about how, she evolved too, as I did. She went through a bit of a transition after my parents got divorced, where she was dating different men, and one of the men that she dated was very conservative, and I grew up in a house that was very, like, whatever. We were, like, eating at Hooters from the time I was, like, 7. And then now...
They do have good wings.
They have really good wings, and now that she was dating this new man, suddenly those things that were chill and cool growing up were no longer chill and cool. So I was suggesting we go eat at Hooters, and in front of her man friend, she was like, I have never eaten at Hooters. And it was one of those stories that I was like, is anyone going to think this is funny but me? Because to me it was insane. And I just ended up telling it on stage, and people got such a kick out of it because she was so like, I have never eaten there and you know it. So I loved telling that story. People still come to my shows just yelling Hooters.
It's so good. I've seen it like 4 times now. Yeah. And I still giggle.
Yeah, and it was a very true story. He was beside her, and she's all like smiling at him and be like, giving me that stink eye, like, don't you dare tell him I eat at Hooters. I do not.
Needless to say, she has a new man in her life.
She's single now.
Oh, okay.
This one did not last. I don't know why.
Shocking.
She wasn't being her true self, clearly. But yeah, that one ended a while ago. But yeah, she's single. So if you know of any old guys, let me know. She likes them old.
How old? How Southern? What are our stipulations here?
Well, she's 76, so I mean, you don't want to go too much older because then it gets dicey. Because men sometimes don't live as long as the ladies, so she needs somebody that's going to outlive her. I think she should go like 70.
Yeah, she's a young spirit. I agree.
Yeah, like 70. She doesn't need like a 60-year-old. Let's not get crazy. Okay. She walks slow. But 70, I think she could have some fun with. Enjoy this twilight part of her years.
I have an uncle, so we'll talk after this.
My mom's a handful, though. Just be prepared.
So you worked on the Mindy Project. Mm-hmm. That is such a beloved show.
Yeah.
Another kind of like cult fan favorite show. What was your favorite sort of memory from that set?
Oh man, I love that show. It was so fun to film, and the writing was always good. I never saw a script where I was like, oh, they phoned it in. Because she's such a writer, and the writer's room was a very coveted place for her. But the cast, they were 3 seasons in already when I joined. So they already knew each other well, but they were so welcoming and lovely, and I just was always smiling and laughing. I didn't realize how good I had it, because that was my first series regular role, and I was like, every set must be this awesome, and that is not the case. But yeah, I remember the finale. We did this big dance, and so a bunch of us had to go to like a choreographers and stuff for a couple of weeks. And just seeing like Ike Barinholtz do these moves, and that was really special. But there was a lot of good memories from that. She just posted about it, but a lot because there was some anniversary that came up with the show. It brought back a lot of those memories. Because I think it was a really special time for her too.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
These were some really lovely words. I just want to quote you back to you.
For a second. Okay.
Because so much of your special is about love. Mm-hmm. And you say, I went many years not having it. Those early years was because I didn't know I was gay and I was trying to be something I'm not. Mm-hmm. It's an awful feeling thinking you weren't worthy of it. I would pray that I'd one day find it, and in the meantime, I worked on loving myself. How has finding love...
I was like, I got really deep on Instagram. Wow. You're like, all right, can you just show us what you're eating for breakfast?
No, you had a moment.
I did. Sometimes I like to be sincere, and just be real with people.
I recently heard someone say, I didn't find love, I earned it.
Oh, interesting.
Which I thought was kind of wonderful, because when you work on yourself and you love yourself,
it
does feel like you earned it. Mm-hmm. How has finding love transformed your life?
Well, I think that, like, now that I'm in a relationship, and I have been for 7 years, I still try to remember what it was like to not have that. Because I remember how frustrating it was as a single person. Like, once people found their person and got married, they acted like they were some expert genius on love, and the rest of us were doing it wrong. And that didn't feel right to me, So I try to remember what that feeling felt like. And so when I say the things about it took a long time to find, I think I'm trying to tell people, like, I got lucky that I found it, but there were many years I didn't have it. So I'm not doing something that you're not. You know what I mean? And it was more of just like kind of encouraging people to like be patient and that hopefully that will come for you, you know, because I remember what an awful feeling it was to not have it.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to suddenly feel like, make it seem like, well, now I have all the answers. I did something right and you didn't. You know, I just got lucky. I got lucky that I found somebody and that we clicked and that she loved me and I loved her and that it works, you know, and not everyone's so lucky, you know.
Well, you got all that good fortune.
That's right. But I want that for people, you know. I want them to find that. But also know that sometimes it takes a while to find it and I don't take it for granted and I don't forget what that felt like to not have it. So just like a little reminder of like we're kind of all in this together, you know.
I think that's really nice.
Yeah.
Okay, my last question. I always pull a card from the card deck. So feel free to take.
I gotta go in the middle. My fat fingers are get in. All right. It's 2 questions. Am I answering both of them?
Yeah.
It says, "Do you fall in love easily?" I don't fall in love easily. I only have fallen in love once with my wife. And that actually did come easy because she's awesome. So that was kind of love at first sight for me, not for her. I had to win her over.
That's for the second podcast.
And then it says, "What is your love language?" Probably words of affirmation and physical touch.
I can't believe that out of the 52 questions, you chose the only one about love. That's wild.
Good fortune.
Truly.
October 25th on Netflix. Find out more about my love language. Also cake. Cake is my love language. When my wife gives me cake, it's beautiful.
What kind of cake?
Any kind.
Really?
I'm not a cake snob. Red velvet. I like that a lot.
I heard that's just chocolate.
Yeah,
Is that true?
It's essentially like a chocolate with a red dye. I'm sure red dye is not good for us. But I'm not the pillar of health.
I don't know about that one.